Hi, this is Paul, Reef Keeper 2, and this video is going to be about the equipment that runs my reef. Okay, here we are in my basement, a section of my basement, and this equipment that you're looking at is directly below the aquarium, which is above in the sunroom. And this is just a view of what you see when you first walk into this section of the basement. Here's my RO unit and my calc stirrer. I put it in a bin because it's such a messy piece of equipment. The calcium hydroxide gets everywhere, so this kind of catches most of it. And my storage bin for my water. I just recently redid this entire sump. I replaced it. I had a Rubbermaid 160-gallon stock tank that I used for a sump, and now I'm using a Hagen 100-gallon fish pond. I'll give you a little view of it this way, which is much nicer because I can get into it much easier. It's not quite as high. Then I took all of my equipment, which was spread out all over the place, and turned it into kind of like a control panel. This way I can easily access and see everything all at a glance, and it eliminated a lot of the extension cords and power strips. Power strips are never a good idea, and I think it came out pretty good. I replaced my sequence pump, which you see in the corner there, with a new Royal exclusive 230-watt DC pump. It's a Red Dragon pump. I can show you over here. It's dead silent, extremely powerful. There it is, pumping its little heart out. You can't see the numbers on the control because of the lighting, but it's running at 210 watts. It's completely adjustable, and it's programmable if you want to change it to run different speeds at different times of the day. And right above it, I have the skimmer control. That one you can see. It's running at 38 watts because the motor finally went on my Red Dragon skimmer. It was 10 years old. You know, I got 10 years out of it. It ran beautifully, and I decided I was going to stick with what works. And so I got a 50-watt DC pump to run the skimmer, and this is the controller, all adjustable. Fantastic quality, dead silent. I'm very happy with this equipment. Here's the apex. Pretty much self-explanatory, which kind of controls everything. To the right of it, I have power conditioners. My air conditioning goes on and off. Sometimes we have surges here, we lose power. And I think it's more important nowadays with all this sensitive electronic equipment to have a power conditioner so that you don't fry any computers or circuit boards. Equipment's expensive and you want to try to protect it. So I plug most of my stuff, or at least the sensitive stuff that might have a computer attached to it, into one of these power conditioners. You can see I labeled everything, which might seem a little over the top, but if you're away from home and something goes wrong and you're trying to give directions to someone on how to fix something or how to unplug something, there's just no way, looking at this, that anybody's going to know what to do without some sort of written instruction or labeling so they know what plug they're pulling out or putting in. So everything is labeled. The heater, up above, an ozonator. I just started using ozone again. I use it in my skimmer, which you can see over here. It's a Bubble King 250 internal, and I have it emptying out into a tray that I constructed with a carbon pad. That way when I'm using ozone, you know, it has to pass through the carbon pad before it gets back into the tank water, which is recommended by everybody who says that you use ozone. I only use it a couple of hours in the morning. I don't really care what the ORC value is. I mean, I have it connected to the apex so that it doesn't go too high as a precaution. But I basically use it for a few hours in the morning to clarify the water, and I find that it works really well. I vent the skimmer outside. You can see the tube, goes right out the basement window. That way I don't have to worry about any, ozone fumes getting in the atmosphere in here. This is a little filter box that I constructed. Maybe I should move back a little bit. It's just to prevent microbubbles from getting into the display. The water pours down from above. You can see the plumbing has had to take all kinds of twists and turns because I had to adjust it because this is the second sump that I put here. And it falls into the filter socks and then into a little Sterite container. I don't use filter socks all the time. I have them in there now because today's Monday and I did some maintenance over the weekend. And that's basically when I put them in. When I'm doing stuff upstairs in the display, if I'm moving stuff around, if I'm cleaning, then I pop some filter socks in. I might also, if the phosphate levels gets too high, I'll drip some lanthanum into one of these socks and bring the phosphate level down. This is biopellet reactor. I don't think I can, maybe from the other side. You can see the pellets tumbling. Calcium reactor. It's a Sharan unit. I think I've had this unit for 10 years and it has functioned well. No problem at all. And to help with my pH, I drip the effluent through a tower. It's just something I constructed out of PVC. It's filled with crushed coral and the effluent from the calcium reactor drips down through it. Now I can also pump some air through the bottom if I want to, and that sort of helps drive the CO2 off. I don't always do that, it depends on the circumstances. But that water drips into a bucket. You can see the bucket sitting in the sump. And in that bucket is a very large industrial grade type of an air stone. And the Apex monitors the pH of the tank. pH is a problem for me in my system. My basement, for some reason, has a very high CO2 level. I don't know whether it's seeping up from the ground or whether it's because of the furnaces or whatever, but I'm always struggling with the pH. And when the pH drops below 7.88, a pond air pump, which is outside, goes on, and it aerates this effluent in the bucket. It helps bring the pH up a couple of points. It's a little, there's a little extra in case I start having a problem, especially in the winter when everything is all closed up. It's pretty much closed up now too, because right now it's 90 degrees outside, all the AC is on and all the windows are closed. Maybe you can see the tumbling pellets, barely. This is my refugium. It will also serve as a frag tank eventually. I have it lit with just one AI light at the moment. And I have my Genesis water changer connected to it. I used to have a dialysis. I don't know if anyone had ever seen some of the prior videos that I have. They're not up on YouTube anymore. But the dialysis used to change the water for me. And I had that unit for almost a decade. And the computer board went and couldn't be replaced. And at the time, the owner of the company, it's C Visions, was constructing his new model, and he didn't have one that he could sell me. So I had to find, an alternative, and so I went with the Genesis. Basically, it just sucks out water a gallon at a time. I have programmed a gallon at a time. There are all kinds of variations that you can do. Blows it up into these containers. And then there's a reservoir down here that has fresh seawater in it. Pumps it up into the other container, which is up there. One empties into the waste, which goes down into the sink. And the new water goes down the pipe and into the sump. Kind of confusing, but there really isn't an easy way to explain it. But it works pretty well. I only change 3 gallons of water a day. I find that that's sufficient. I don't use water changes to try to dilute out any kind of impurity in the water. I feel like water changes are specifically for trace elements, and that's what I use the water changes for. I had this fuge here before I had my new sump. With my old tank, the tank upstairs is 1 year old, a little over 1 year old. With my old tank, this was used to hold all my corals to do the exchange. So this held all of my SPS for a couple of months while I was changing the tank over upstairs. Because it's filled all the way, I have to brace it. That's what this wood is around the center. Otherwise the tank will bow out. It's supposed to be meant to be put in the ground, so earth would be packed around the sides. So I sort of reinforced it with some wood just to keep it from bowing out. This one doesn't need it because it's only filled a few inches high. Over here's my battery backup. Power goes out. This switches right over. It runs the power heads up in the display, probably approximately like 5 to 8 hours. It just went out the other day. We had a power failure and the battery was totally dead. The tank was completely still. I had to go out and start up the generator. So luckily I was home and went out and bought a new battery. So this should be good for another 3 years, and I have to make a mental note to make sure that once it gets a couple of years old to check it. So that's my new sump. Oh, I forgot something. My UV unit. I can use this Fuge as a quarantine tank if I wish to. If I want to put fish, corals, whatever, into this tank, all I have to do is turn on the UV. It's connected to the entire system, and I can feel pretty safe that no pathogen is going to get from here into my display. This way I don't have to have two separate systems. I haven't finished the plumbing yet. I only got one line going, and that's the line from the UV, which right now isn't turned on. But when I need to service that, this line, once I have it connected to the sump, will be the line that the water runs through. This kind of solved my problem of where am I going to put a quarantine tank. You have to start an entire tank with all the new equipment and everything, and I try to think of a way that I could do this without having to have a completely new system. And this has worked pretty well. I have this on a reverse lighting schedule, that's why it's dark. So this is lit up in the evening. When the tank upstairs goes dark, this one's lit. It helps with the pH issue. Just a little bit of work to do there, plumbing. This is a pretty big improvement over what I had before. Besides the fact that it looks a lot better, it's so quiet down here. I come down here and I get a little bit of fright because I used to hear the hum of the pump and now I don't hear anything. And it's like, oh my God, is it working? But there I go. Thanks for watching.